Okay, looks like it's 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is the third public information meeting for the US-285 and South Broadway Interchange Reconstruction Project. My name is Jake Warren. I'm with the Public Works Department, and I'm the city's project manager for this project. So we have I have one other person here with me to present, and I think possibly a third from our design consultant, Atkins Engineering. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Good evening. Hi, this is Dan Little with Atkins. I am the consultant project manager for the project and look forward to talking about the project here tonight. The other person, hopefully Scott can get on. Scott Baker is our landscape architect who's been doing a lot of the landscape and aesthetic designs for the project, and we've got some exciting concepts and ideas that we're proposing under this project to show you here tonight. There's Scott.
And good evening, Dan. I am on. Hello.
Good time. So, as I mentioned, this is the third public meeting we've had for the project, and if you're curious about what was presented in the previous public meetings, I'd point you to the project webpage, which you can find at engaged.englewoodco.gov. So there's a bunch of information about the project on the page, but we also have recordings of the first and second meetings posted there. So feel free to check those out if you want to get caught up on things. But what we want to do with this meeting tonight is present an update on the design progress, go over specifically how we're meeting the goals set out for the project. We're going to share a little bit about what construction is going to look like and how long it's going to last. And we're going to present on some of the landscaping and aesthetic treatments being proposed. So at the end of the presentation, we'll open up the discussion, allow anyone to ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer those. So with that, I'll jump to our first slide here on project progress. So the traffic study and alternatives analysis were initiated and completed earlier this year. Like I said before, we hosted public meetings on February 18th and May 27th. The preliminary design and environmental investigations were completed just in the last few months. And we're in the late stages of the final design process, and we'll be doing our final design review with CDOT here in the next couple weeks. So before I let Dan and Scott talk about what's being proposed, I just want to give a kind of quick reminder of the project goals and give some context to the changes that are being proposed. So first off, we want to improve traffic flow on 285. We want to improve safety for both drivers and pedestrians. We want to improve the aesthetics and branding throughout the interchange, such that it serves as a gateway to the nearby downtown Englewood. We want to improve the interchange experience for multimodal use, such as pedestrians and bicyclists. And we want to improve drainage, so we reduce the frequency of stormwater backups, primarily on 285, where that has been an issue in the past. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Dan, and I think he's going to start off with talking about the preferred alternative.
Dan, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Jake. Thanks everyone for attending tonight. So the preferred alternative that you see here on the map is the result of the work that we did. As Jake said earlier in the year, we did some traffic analysis. We studied various alternatives for interchange types. And this was the alternative that we moved forward with in our designing and are going to move forward with construction. Some of the aspects that you see with this preferred alternative, if you look on the south side of 285, that intersection with the ramps down there, you can see it's moved north of the existing location. So this is the alternative we refer to as the tight diamond. So we're kind of making that diamond configuration of the ramps even tighter than it is today. That has a few different benefits. It does provide some additional buffer space on the south side to some of the residential areas, some opportunities for some improved multimodal access to that southwest quadrant, and those aspects. It does have some traffic operational benefits to have the signals functioning together in that aspect with the interchange. So this was the alternative that was picked as the preferred, met the goals and the traffic conditions the best. Some of the other aspects of the project were really to focus on what we refer to as a context-sensitive design, sensitive to the area, and try to minimize the improvements and any impacts to adjacent properties. And this option has done a pretty good job of that. We really don't have any right-of-way impacts. All of this is being constructed within CDOT or City of Inglewood right-of-way. One of the other key aspects, this interchange was built a long time ago in the 60s, and some of the geometric standards from back then have been changed and are more current today with the new vehicles. So we have been designing improved geometrics into the interchange, and you'll see some of the configuration of the ramps, little flatter departure angles, for example, as you come off of 285, just for improved safety. And then the other thing you'll see is, in addition to just adding the third through lane on US-285, we've also added another lane on the bridge on South Broadway for northbound to westbound. The bridge is similar width to what it is today, but we were able to get an extra lane on there for some improved traffic operations. So that's some of the highlights of the preferred alternative. Yeah, go ahead. So the other thing that we've studied throughout this process was what the structure should look like. And we looked at, again, several alternatives. This is what we selected as the preferred alternative for the structure, which is a two-span option. Continues to have a excuse me. There is going to be a pier in the middle of US-285 like there is today. But what you can see here in this graphic is that the bridge is much longer, wider than it is today. You can see these dashed lines here is where the existing structure is, the tall walls right next to the highway. So as you can see, we've significantly increased the opening and really made this more of an opening through here, not just to get the 3 lanes, but laid back the slopes so we don't have those tall walls. It does reduce the cost as well. Shorter, more landscape walls are more cost effective than those tall walls tight to US-285. And then you're starting to see some of the aesthetic stuffs that were implemented in this, and Scott will get into that a little bit later. So the next thing we want to talk about here is how we're going to build this project. As you know, this is a pretty tight, constrained area, and building this is going to take some creativity. So the first phase of building this project is really we got to get the bridge replaced so that we can get the longer spans in there, so we can open up 285, so we can build that. So the first phase is building the bridge, and we're going to build the bridge in 2 phases, starting with the west half of the bridge, is what you see here in this graphic. On the left, there's a typical section, and on the right, this is a cutout of some of our design plans that shows the hatched area is what we're constructing, and then on the right side is where we would be shifting traffic onto one half of the existing structure. In order to do that, because of the limited widths that we do have in here, we will be reducing South Broadway traffic from 2 lanes north and 2 lanes south to 1 lane north and 1 lane south. So that's a reduction in capacity for a short period of time in order to do this. We've looked at the traffic operations of that, and there'll be some increased delays to this area, but it's within reasonable expectations. We feel like through some public campaigns and outreach, there's other routes that can be used as well, if as people are aware of this construction occurring. And I'll get into the timeframes of this in a little bit. The other significant movement change as part of this option is the southbound to eastbound left turn getting onto US-85 is going to be detoured and rerouted in order to accommodate this phase. So once we build this phase, we'll move into phase 2, which is basically just flipping over. We'll build the east half of the bridge under this phase, moving traffic over onto the bridge that we just built in the phase 1 traffic. So very similar configuration. We have 1 lane north, 1 lane south on Broadway. We're still continuing to restrict that left turn movement southbound to eastbound, and just repeating what we did in the first phase. The next slide here. This slide here will show you the detour for that left turn movement that we're restricting to get onto US-285. We've looked at the volumes of that left turn movement. That's one of the lower volumes at the interchange. And we've selected using Old Hamden Avenue to Sherman Street and then back down to 285 through that signal as our detour route for that left turn movement. So, as I said before, once we get the bridge constructed, that opens us up. So now we have a longer structure under there, and we can start to work on the reconstruction of US-285. So there's 3 phases here that you see. Starting on the left, 3A, we'll start construction by building the north half of the westbound US-285 lanes. We've got the pier in the middle, so we have to work around that. That gives us a few additional limitations that we have to do in order to build this, but we'll build that north half. We'll build some additional detour pavement as part of that phase 3A, so that under phase 3B, the typical or the plan view that you see in the middle here, we'll be able to shift traffic. We'll shift westbound traffic onto that new pavement and detour pavement, and then build out the remainder of the westbound US-285 construction for this alternative. And then once we have that westbound 285 reconstructed, there's actually enough width using the detour pavement that we built as well to shift all of US-285 traffic 4 lanes onto that north span of the bridge, and we can build out the eastbound traffic under phase 4. I guess the couple key messages out of this on 285 is that we are going to maintain 2 lanes of traffic in each direction during peak hours. There will be some non-peak hour restrictions in order to accomplish this work, but during peak hours, we're going to continue to have the 2 lanes in each direction with lane reductions and restrictions. There'll also be some other activities where we're probably going to have to close 285 for a short period of time during those non-peak hours overnight, where we would detour traffic up the ramps and through the ramps and across. But when we set girders and poured bridge decks and stuff like that, we can't have traffic going underneath the bridge, so we'll have to do some short-term duration closures and detours as part of that. I'd say the other first thing is getting the bridge down too. That's another critical safety element that we'll be detouring traffic around for that. So that at that point, we'll have the project constructed. So to summarize the schedule of how long that's going to take to get through those phases, what you see here is we anticipate getting through the final plans, getting CDOT concurrence to advertising the project and selecting a contractor, going through city council to get the contract awarded to the contractor. There's several steps that we still have to go through before we could start construction, but we anticipate getting through those steps so that we can start construction the beginning of July. And then the first activities would be to, as I said, the phase 1 and phase 2, build the bridge and the South Broadway work. We anticipate that'll take approximately 10 months, about 5 months for each of those phases. which will take us into the spring of 2023, at which time, like I said, we can start building US-285 reconstruction through the summer of 2023 and into the fall, and anticipate having the construction completion by the end of 2023. I guess the only thing I would note is there's a lot of things that we have to do in order to get this. So this is our anticipated construction schedule. If we get held up in any of those steps, that could have an effect on the schedule, but I feel pretty confident at this point that we can do this. So as part of the design work, we've been doing environmental studies. This is a federally funded project. There's partial federal funding for this project, so we have to do NEPA clearance for this project, and there's several environmental resource studies that have been completed. You see the list here: air quality, noise, cultural or historic, biological, hazardous materials, section 4F, 6F. So all those studies are completed. CDOT's reviewed several of these. They're finishing some of these up. We have found no significant impacts from any of these studies completed to date. And I think part of that is we've been able to stay within the existing right of way of the CDOT in the city of Inglewood. So that's what you see here on the left is that's the historic resources map, and that's our what we call the area of potential effect. That was the study area that was studied for these environmental resource studies. And we've gotten through, as far as cultural historic is concerned, we did get through an eligibility determination with the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, and we have submitted the effects determination, which stating that there was no effects as a result of the project, and we're just waiting for SHPO concurrence on that. So, next slide. So I'm going to hand it over to Scott to talk about maybe something more fun, which is some of the landscape aesthetics and branding elements for the project.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. Yeah, so when it comes to aesthetics for this bridge, we're focusing on 3 different items. All of them have to do with your experience, whether you're coming across the bridge on Broadway and kind of a multimodal bike experience or walking, or whether you're driving underneath it and it serves as this entryway into downtown Englewood. It's this place, this threshold that you pass through. And so those are the different ways we were looking at this this element, this landscape. So if you can go to the next slide. What you're looking at here has evolved a little bit. This was a little bit of a preliminary exercise. You're looking at what we dubbed the bookend columns. And so you have these 2 columns on either side of the bridge with this span across that Dan kind of talked about before. You can see that we've got walls tiered, and the walls are actually going to be a little bit lower than they're shown here. We're also trying to plant the inside of this. So we're taking the experience now, which is this really tight corridor, and we're opening it up, we're laying those walls back and creating a planted landscape. That's one of the things that visiting the place today, as you experience it, there's seasonality there's seasonal interest, there's flowering trees that kind of change over. And so we're trying to bring that element forward into this future plan. You can also see the pedestrian scale railing at the top. And the bookend columns have the new Englewood logo to really help reinforce that wayfinding and placemaking element that this offers. Next slide. So this image here, we've got 2 of these different images. This is the view looking west. And so this was one of our study models. And so you're kind of hovering up above the highway road here. You can see the 2 lanes kind of going under the bridge there. This view really does a good job showing how those landscape walls are a little bit naturalistic, but still provide some of that structure and form. And those are the areas that we're planning to plant with some seasonal flowering and interesting plant materials, but they are all native or naturalized to be in this climate, so there'll be low water use. If you can go to the next slide. This is the view looking east, so we're a little bit higher up. And you can really see how those walls here really tie back into that bridge and continue underneath, really creating this kind of flow between the two sides. You've got the tiers up on both sides, creating this very kind of open and welcoming form. Next. So one of the other things that, this graphic here is showing our detailed planting plan. So you can see there's a lot of nuance to the planting materials going into this section up along the 285 highway, but you'll also experience that as you walk or bike across Broadway. The blue text highlight at the top there, the proposed entry artwork, this is an opportunity to do public art in this median. And so our plan is to keep the plant palette fairly simple, coming with some low materials around a site for artwork that really creates a moment, a monument as you enter downtown heading north on South Broadway. Next slide. The other experience here is being a pedestrian or a cyclist and moving north or south through this corridor. So we're looking at about a 10-foot wide walkway, sidewalk on either side of the bridge. We do have constraints in terms of cost and structure size and those sorts of things. So we do have an attached walkway, but we've moved the light poles. In the existing condition, the light poles are kind of pushed up against the railing, and now we've moved them out to be about 2 feet off of the curb. And so that creates this nice walkway experience between the railing and the light that is a little bit more open in feeling than the current condition. Next slide. And finally, we have the wayfinding wooded nook concept. And so this, I believe this is the final form for this placemaking guide. And so we wanted to pull some of these elements forward into our design plan. And you've seen them through some of the other graphics and images here, but it's really about creating this wooded nook idea for the city of Englewood. And we're trying to pull that theme in through this project. And I think, Dan, that's back to you.
Yeah, I can take that. I guess just back to the other slide, we're still sort of the wayfinding guide signs. We're working through locations and messaging that wayfinding guide signs are going to look like. So we're still working through some of that, but I think that what you see there is what we're proposing that the signing would look like, pulling in that guide that was prepared by the city in the past. So one of we've talked about this in the last 2 public meetings, but one of the key components of the project is closure of the Sherman Street intersection, where there's a traffic signal now, and it's a safety issue. It's too close to the ramps, and it's just a poor location for a signal. So part of this project is to close that signalized intersection. As discussed in the past, we would reroute pedestrian multimodal use down to the Little Dry Creek Trail over here on the right-hand side of this map, underneath 285, and then back up on the other side of South Sherman Street. So that still remains the same. I guess the other thing that kind of shown on this map here is just overall improved mobility, multimodal mobility throughout the interchange itself. So we have 8-foot sidewalks proposed on the north and south side of 285 along the ramps on the east side of Broadway coming up to Broadway. We've got the 10-foot sidewalks across the bridge, as Scott talked about before. And then even on the southwest corner, we're adding a 6-foot wide sidewalk in a location that really doesn't have a sidewalk today. So that kind of completes that multimodal connection. So I think the wider sidewalks, adding sidewalks and paths throughout the interchange area is really going to improve that multimodal experience, and really the safety aspect of it as well, right? Next slide. So kind of closing up the presentation here, we started with the goals of the project, and we put this graphic here together. I get that there's a lot of a lot of things we're pointing to, but there's really there were a lot of needs on this project. As we went through the goals, the things that are implemented as part of the project to meet those goals are shown and demonstrated here. Some of the things, not just adding the third through lane on 285, replacing the bridge itself and upgrading the interchange just created a lot of opportunity for us to implement other things as part of the project as well, like the landscaping, the aesthetics, and the branding elements for the project as well, and just improving that multimodal connection. And then you can kind of see it in here, our storm sewer system. We are replacing and upgrading a majority of the storm sewer system throughout this location, just bringing that up to design standards as well. So that's another aspect that's included in the project as well. And then I think we have one more slide. Just reinforce the schedule. So we're expecting here in early November to have our 90% design plan submittal. We'll go through a review process with our partner agency, CDOT, stakeholders within the city of Inglewood and others on the project in November. And then we'll be looking to wrap up 100% plans for advertisement the first part of next year, and then get those in front of CDOT so that we can get authorization to advertise. So we're on schedule so far and just continuing to push forward. I think with that, I think we're ready to open it up for questions.
Yeah, so I think if you do have questions, just go ahead and use the raise your hand function, and we can call on you, and then you can unmute and ask your question. You should see the raise your hand button on the bottom center of your screen if you're on a computer, and if you called in, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and unmute using *6. So, any questions? Okay, I'm seeing one on here. I'm not sure if that's a name or an abbreviation, but you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question.
I would like to know if there's a reason why the bridge goes up when it goes southbound, being that people like to gun their engines going up that hill. Is there any way that can be stopped?
Well, unfortunately, the existing grades kind of dictate that. Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're actually reducing the grades by a little bit as you run across the bridge, just to meet ADA requirements, get it to under 5%. But as you're heading south on Broadway, the grade goes up by quite a bit and for quite a ways. So there isn't a whole lot we can do about that.
Yeah, we're raising the bridge a little bit just because we have to get vertical clearance to 285, but overall I'd say the grades aren't going to change substantially across the interchange. Hopefully, I'll just comment, hopefully that, one of the things that makes people, I don't know, this is just my observation, one of the things that makes people gun their engines is when they're frustrated and they have to sit at a light. So hopefully by improving the interchange and making traffic flow through here, we won't have as many frustrated drivers that feel the need to do that.
Okay, it looks like Neil has a question.
Okay, I believe that you've answered my question in your presentation. I have one of the closest single-family homes to the project over on Bannock, and it looks as though you guys have planned it such that you will not need to reroute traffic up Bannock while you're demolishing the bridge or anything else. Do you, I'm asking one more time because I think it would be tragic if you have to reroute traffic up Bannock. Do you feel confident that you will not need to reroute up any of those streets to the south while the bridge is being demolished or any other construction is being done?
Yes, but there's some, I would say that we can use, so when we're building the bridge and we have to close 285, we can use the interchange ramps for that construction. I really don't, I guess I don't see a need to detour traffic on Bannock Street, to be honest. Formally signed. If we were going to formally sign a detour, to me, it would be on a more of a major street like the Cherokee or something like that. You know, for if at some point when we reconstruct those ramps, we're probably going to have to close that ramp in order to get the tie-ins to work. There's some sub phases in there, which there may be some, you know, a day or two or a weekend or something where we would have to detour some traffic potentially up. Again, I think we would choose something like Cherokee over back to South Broadway or something like that, and not use Bannock Street. Certainly isn't going to be a long-term thing like like I was showing before, where we're using Old Hamden to Sherman Street. And to be honest with you, we picked that route because it's not a resident, you know, it's not a residential. We didn't want our detour traffic through a residential area. We wanted it to be through more of a commercial area.
Okay, and it looks like, and if you could give me your name, looks like you have another question.
Wendy.
I'm sorry?
Wendy's my first name.
Okay. Go ahead and ask your question, Wendy.
Another question, as far as I live kind of the corner of Jefferson and Acoma, and how late will construction be going at night? Will it be overnight construction? Do you have a time?
We do envision night construction in order to do this work as part of the project. I'm guessing that your question is related to potential noise impacts and dust or other things that occur at nighttime. The extent of night construction is going to be somewhat dependent upon the contractor and the contractor's proposed way of doing the work, but there will be certain activities that are going to occur at night, such as the removal of the existing bridge. I don't expect that to be continuous, but there are going to be periods where we're going to have nighttime construction.
And I'll just add, the city has a noise and ordinance in place for construction projects from where basically construction projects can't create noise between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. So where we don't make exceptions for work that sort of has to occur at night, they'll be limited to working within those hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. that is. Neil, did you have another question?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, you kind of answered the one question about Bannock. I guess my only other, and I really like the way you've you spoke of using the ramps for 285 detour while you're messing with the bridge. My question, though, you did say that ramps, you know, at some point are going to get redone there, and there may be a rerouting. My question to you is I didn't see it on your presentation. Will the ramps be getting reconstructed, if you will, moved, whatever needs to be done at the exact same time as you're tearing down the bridge, or will it be done at a separate time, which I think might alleviate, you know, other rerouting potential?
Again, it's sort of the contractor's approach to doing the work, but I don't see them doing that at the same time. I think that would be a different activity that they would do when they tie in those ramps. The one, what I'll say is on that southwest corner near Bannock there, that ramp's being moved to a new location. So majority of that ramp can be built offline of the existing ramp. Just becomes the tie-in point where it comes back onto 285. Will have to be coordinated.
Okay.
But it is in a new location, so that area is a little bit easier to construct.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions? Well, if there aren't any more questions, you know, we can wrap things up. I'll just, once again, I'll plug the project webpage that we have up. We try to keep that up to date with what's going on in the project. There's also an email list you can subscribe to on there where we send monthly updates out to that list, and my contact information is on there as well. So if you do have questions that come up in the future, just feel free to reach out. Other than that, we can wrap things up. So everybody have a good night.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.